What is the creepiest glitch in the Matrix you have experienced? So I commented about this over on the Me sub, where it really doesn't belong, since the only witnesses that I know of were my husband and I. But it's a strange thing I can't explain. I am really into trees, and we live in a neighborhood with a lot of nice, mature oaks, elms, maples, etc. There is a house around the corner that have two absolutely huge magnolias, which are uncommon in my area. I used to love to paw them on my walks because they smelled great. Hubby and I always get pissed when neighbors cut down healthy trees for no reason, so we particularly noticed when we were on a walk and both magnolias had been chopped down. I could see both stumps surrounded by the chopped up wood and a wealth of smaller branches. I went on a rant about it, and even grabbed a small branch with a bud from the ground near the stump to take home. Without the two trees, this house had no privacy from the next house over anymore, so you could easily see the entire yard next door from where we stood, something not possible when that tree was there, as it was pretty huge. Fast forward to the spring, and I'm out walking around again, and there's the magnolia tree that was closer to the road, safe and sound. Now, I know people will say I only saw one cut down, but I distinctly remember hubby's and my conversation and saying why did they have to cut them both down? I could see having to remove the one close to the house, but the one nearer the road there was no reason to remove. Hubby does remember our conversation, but is quicker to assume we somehow were mistaken than I am. Because I remember the two stumps and being so angry they were both gone. Happily, one of them is back. Yo guys. So basically I don't know if we can call this creepy as in creepy scary, but it is definitely not normal. So one day, me and my mum decided that we were going to sleep in my room for the night. A little bit of background, the living room is in between my room and my mom's room. Impossible to get to the other without crossing the hall, right? So I was in my room, and she was in the hall browsing on her laptop. She called out to me asking me to tidy up my bed so she could come in and knock out. I yelled back at her saying okay cool, but I need to use your laptop mum, cause I needed to use hers for a bit. She said okay and that she had left it in the hall, and started walking towards my room where I met her at my room door as I was heading out to grab it from the sofa. My mom was empty-handed. Before I reached the hall, she yelled out to me saying how there at $% her laptop was already on my bed? In the exact place where I was lazing around. And she definitely did not put it there cause she walked to my room empty-handed like I said. Still don't know how, what or why. Not sure what you consider this, but it's creepy nonetheless. December 22, 1998. It's 9 a.m. and my aunt makes a surprise visit to my house. My parents are divorced, and my mom is at work. She decides to treat my brother and I to a movie. She's never really done this before, but we're both excited. It's now around 10 a.m. and we're sitting in the movie theater watching the movie. I'm getting bored, and my mind wanders. I suddenly have a thought flash through my head, which parent would you rather die first? Being a kid, I weigh the option. Maybe mom because she's so strict. Maybe dad because I don't see him very often. Then I shake the idea out of my head and think to myself, don't even think about this now because it won't happen for a very long time. The movie ends, and we drive back to my house. My mom is home, which is weird because she should be at work, and I remember making a joke to my aunt that maybe she got fired finally. My mom hated her job and boss and constantly joked how she wished he'd just fire her already so she can collect unemployment and find something better. I walk in and my mom tells me my dad, an armored guard, has been shot and killed during a robbery. He was gunned down at 10:02 a.m. The only reason my mom was home is because her sump pump broke and the neighbors called to say the lawn was flooding and icing over. The only way she found out he was killed was when she turned on the news and there was a breaking report. About an hour after, she got the phone call from the police, hospital. More weirdness, my dad was 44 years old. He died on the 22nd of December 1998. He was gunned down at 10:02, but pronounced dead at 11:22. Edit, forgot this story. Years earlier when my parents were still married, they were fighting and my dad said something to my mum. "You're going to feel really sorry the day I go to work and get shot in the head." My mom remembers he said this in December, too, because she was putting up Christmas decorations. One time I went over to my friend's home to go pick her up. When I walked in, she was running about half naked downstairs getting ready, and I told her I'd go wait outside. As I'm standing just outside her home, I could hear the voices of her sister and mother through a window. Her sister was crying really loudly and painfully, and the mother was responding back with stern-sounding responses, like a fight of some type, I guess. They have very distinctive accents, as the mother is Somalian and they're the only Somalian people on that road. Her neighbors are white English people. They were both talking in a mixture of Arabic and English, so I couldn't understand them. I think at various points the mother was even using the daughter's distinctive foreign-sounding name. So my friend opens the door ready to set off with me. When we're about a block away so that we were no longer within hearing range of their home, I asked her why her sister was so upset. She got really confused with me. I explained what I'd heard. She then told me that neither her sister or her mother had been home at the time. In fact, the house was empty except her, which made sense as my friend would never greet me half naked or run about like that downstairs in their kitchen etc. if her family were home. She got spooked out and wanted to drop it right away, as the idea of these unknown voices in her home creeped her out. My friend loves venting about her sister, so I knew it wasn't about trying to cover for her, like she'll call me up when fights are going on to gossip right away. She'd never resist the urge to spill. Unless maybe they were home without her realizing? Maybe they sounded loud to me but were inaudible from the inside? All of which would be just as sinister to me too. Why would they hide from my friend like that? How had her elderly mother managed to sneak about the house unseen the whole morning? So it's always confused me, because I know that I 100% heard these two women speaking. It wasn't only hearing a voice for a second and thinking it's someone calling your name. It was clear as day those two specific people in her home talking and crying for at least 2 or 3 minutes. Two possible creepy things connected to it. Her sister had once tried to commit suicide by jumping from a window in that home, and her sister is also into mysticism, to the degree we found broken eggs in the corner of one room where she tried some cleansing ritual. So maybe if it was otherworldly, it was related to that? Okay, I have 3 and 2 are similar. Not sure if they're necessarily glitches, but definitely weird. Not as weird as some of these that I read though. When I was in the 7th grade, Pokemon cards had just come out and were the newest fad. I, being a super cool 13-year-old, of course collected them. Didn't bother playing the game, but collected the cards nonetheless. I kept my cards in a binder in those protective plastic sleeves that people usually keep baseball cards in. One day, I was looking through my cards and noticed that one of them was gone, the holographic Macamp, for any other Pokemon nerds out there, which was really weird since the binder hadn't moved from where I had left it and the card was in there last time I checked. I looked everywhere for that stupid card and couldn't find it anywhere. Not too long before this happened, my aunt told me a story about how she had lost a diamond tennis bracelet and had prayed to Saint Anthony by saying, "Tony, Tony, look around, I've lost something that can't be found," and later that night the bracelet was sitting on her pillow when she went to go to bed. I decided to try the prayer, because why not? So I said, "Tony, Tony, look around, I've lost something that can't be found," and then went about cleaning my room that I had destroyed in the process of looking for the card. I knelt down to pick something up, and sitting behind my dresser, with just enough of the top sticking out, was the mother-loving Pokemon card. I was dumbfounded since I had searched every square inch of my room and definitely looked behind the dresser. Also, my mom was the only one home while all this happened, and she was downstairs the whole time. No idea how the card got out of the binder, where it was when I couldn't find it, or how it got behind the dresser. I've used the Saint Anthony prayer a few times since then and it works every time. It's not that I just end up finding the item, but it's always found in a weird place where it shouldn't be and is unexplainable. So, I guess if you ever can't find something, try the prayer and maybe Tony will help you out. When I was in high school, my mom only worked a few blocks away, so would drive me to and from school every day. One morning during my junior year on our way to school, I had a very nagging feeling that something was wrong with my grandma, my mom's mum. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to freak my mom out for no reason. I went about my day and didn't really think about it again. When my mum came to pick me up that afternoon, she was visibly upset, so I asked her what was wrong. She told me that my grandma had had a heart attack and was in the hospital and that she had to go to New Hampshire, we live in Chicago, to go see her. My grandmother never recovered and passed away a week later. Every night before I go to bed I watch TV, and when I turn the TV off I put the remote on the nightstand next to my bed. One night a few months ago I did just that. The next morning I went to turn the TV on while I was getting ready for work, but the remote was gone. Again, I looked everywhere for the remote, nowhere to be found. It bugged me to no end that I couldn't find the remote, since I knew, without a doubt, that I had placed it on my nightstand the night before. Flash forward a few months later. I got a new bed and was moving my old bed out of my room. It's also important to mention that I have a wooden bed frame that the box spring sets down into. As I was moving my old bed out of my room, I lifted up the box spring and there was the remote. Not like it had just fallen off the nightstand and landed under the bed on the floor, but it was laying in between the box spring and the wooden frame in the middle of the frame. The only way it could get where it was would be that someone, which would have had to be me since I live alone, lifted the box spring and mattress and put it there, which I definitely did not do. Weird shit. Love reading everyone's stories, by the way. Strangest for me. A friend of mine, K, dated a girl, D, long ago. She was cool, and they dated for a while, but they broke up. Some time later, he began dating another girl, M. They stayed together for a couple of years, throughout high school mostly. At one point, I was hanging out with the both of them at M's parents' house. M's dad caught us smoking weed, but didn't care all that much. Fast forward like 4 years. K and I are talking about the past, and he informs me that M's dad had killed himself. I was shocked. He was a nice guy. I remember the time he caught us and we share a laugh about old times. Then like 6 months later, it comes up again. I ask how M is doing, but K is confused, saying it was D's dad that killed himself. I tell him that when he told me, we reminisced about the time he caught us smoking. K remembers this conversation well, and is completely baffled as, at the time it seems M's dad had killed himself. But that was no longer the case. It's not the kind of thing he would confuse. Anyways, M's dad is alive and well. It would seem we jumped into a slightly different reality at some point. I think the creepiest so far is the one where I had a phone call from an alternate future or current future, and I have posted on here before. In 2007 I got a phone call from an elementary school, and a teacher asked for my name and said she was calling about a young boy named Alex. They gave his last name too, who was feeling sick, and that they contacted me because I'm his emergency contact. I told them I had never heard of the school or the boy, and I'm not sure how they got my information. The lady then asked if this is my first and last name, and I said yes, but I insisted that I wasn't the emergency contact for this child. Had never heard of the last name. She said goodbye and hung up. I later told a friend about it and we looked the number up on reverse number sites, and we found no results. We even called the number and we got the "this number is not in use" message from the operator. 9 years later the number is still not in use. I don't remember the name of the teacher or the school, but I do remember the name of the child. I don't know anyone with that last name. I'm convinced it's a glitch. I can see someone getting my number wrong. I've had the wrong number thing happen, but for someone to nail my first and last name is what struck me as odd and still does. Also the fact that according to her my first and last name and phone number was written down in their emergency contact list. Who would place it there? I didn't. I have two different stories that involve my cat. The first one, when I was younger I lived in this apartment complex with my family. A lot of weird things happened there, but really only to me, so I don't really know how real those were, or if I just imagined them. I know this is real though because it involves my brother and sister. I remember me and little sister were going to sleep in my brother's room, let's call him Steve. I remember he had this small bedside lamp on the floor next to the door. So as me and my sister were getting ready for bed we had the light on, and we both remember seeing my cat pass the lamp, and as soon as she did the light bulb exploded. My other brother was just down the hall and heard the bulb explode. I remember him saying something along the lines of, "What did you do to Steve's lamp?" And after we told him that it was our cat that made it explode, he then told us that that was bullshit because my cat was right next to him when he heard it. TL, Doctor, I saw my cat make a light bulb explode when she was actually down the hall. The second story is pretty similar, but this time I was alone. I was in my room at night with the lights off, and my room was pretty messy. I had this twin mattress propped up on one end by some boxes. I remember clearly seeing my cat go underneath the mattress, and when I lifted it up so I can pick her up, she was nowhere under the mattress or in the room. I have plenty of crazy stories involving the department, but those are more ghost stories and not glitches in the Matrix. Not too long ago I was sitting in the middle of the back seat of a car. It was dark and my mother, her friend, and I were on our way back from dinner. As we were stopped at a light that had just turned green, I was casually looking around at the cars in front of us slowly moving forward. I noticed a man on the very close to the edge of the road who proceeded to walk into the middle of our lane a couple cars up, and suddenly he disappeared. We drove past the spot where I saw him standing and there was no sign of anyone who was hit or anything. This is strange, but I distinctly remember him wearing a forest green sweater and a brown beanie. I don't even know how this was possible, but it still weirds me out to this day. So this happened about a month ago and I've been wanting to write it up somewhere, but it hadn't seemed so useful yet. We had gone to sleep as usual. She got up earlier than usual and was explaining to me her dream. It was a nightmare and Tom Cruise was the base of it. In her dream he was still married to Katie Holmes, not big fans of either, which made it kind of funny. Girlfriend and Katie are talking in the dream and Katie let me girlfriend know she was from Toledo, Ohio. I thought that was a specific thing to remember and asked if she had any idea where she was from. She didn't. We looked it up and behold, she was from Toledo, Ohio. I wanted to write this down somewhere, but I haven't had the time to. I just randomly thought about glitches in the Matrix today and started reading all of these experiences and thought that I should share one that I had with anyone who wants to read about it. So back in August of this year, I was in my room, which is in a basement, and I was just cleaning off my desk when I saw something out of the corner of my eye crawl out from underneath my bed. I immediately turned round and kind of yelped, but only to see that it was a spider. I calmed down and looked for a jar in my room to put it in so I could let it outside. I found a glass bottle, but when I turned it upside down, water came out of it, so I looked for a different one because I didn't want to cause any harm to this spider. I found a candle holder jar that didn't have anything in it, so I decided to use it. I put it over the spider, grabbed a piece of paper, slid it carefully under the jar without lifting it up, and picked it up so I could walk upstairs to let it out the front door. The paper was really thin, so when I got to the living room, I accidentally slipped out the paper and the spider fell on my leg, followed by it crawling onto the floor. I quickly put the jar over the spider and backed up while looking at it, making sure it didn't crawl away somehow. I knew we had thick papers on the table, so I took one while still looking at the spider. I decided to slightly open the front door so the spider wouldn't fall out again, and so I could just open the screen door with my foot while holding the spider. I went over to the jar, slid the thicker paper underneath, and held it extra careful. I peered into the jar to see if the spider was still in there. I looked at it through the jar through the whole process of walking to the screen door and opening it with my foot. When I was outside I looked one more time just to make sure it didn't fall again on my floor inside, and sure enough it was still in there. I carefully set the jar and paper on the concrete, and when I lifted up the jar, no spider. It just vanished somehow. I patted all my clothing to make sure it wasn't on me somehow, and there was nothing there. Where did the spider go, and how did it even vanish out of thin air like that? I tried googling what happened and nothing showed up. I freaked out for a few days, and when I told my mum, she didn't believe me. I'd if this counts as a glitch, but still has always weirded me out. When I was 13 I was in the outfield during one of my baseball games when I suddenly got this overwhelming feeling of doom. After the game I called a bunch of my friends and family members to see if they were okay because I knew something was wrong somewhere. Everyone was okay, but I still felt really off. The next day my sister's friend, whom I am pretty close with as well, comes over and is crying a ton. He told us that the day before, around the time of my game, his best friend back home in Alaska got too drunk at a party, wandered off into the woods, and never came back. The next day they had found his body half eaten by a bear. After he told me this, the feeling of dread I had for the past day immediately left, and I felt incredibly relieved. Still one of the strangest things that's happened to me. We were at the airport waiting for a friend's plane to come in. Hi's plane landed, but then right behind it was another airplane that had Quicksilver or some other name like that on it, which came in fast and crashed into the first plane. There was a big ball of fire and explosion. Then I found myself waking up from my bed like none of it even happened. My friend decided not to take the plane and stay where he is. I had a lucid dream in which I traveled to the lower astral hell. When I woke up there was the clear-eyed outline of a demon sitting next to my bed. It was there for 3 seconds before it faded out. It had followed me back to this dimension. When my dad came back from the store when I turned 18, then the next day he was gone again.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.